Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson here to welcome you to the inaugural episode of the Mission First People Always, Great Leaders, Great Teams podcast. It's a place where we can have honest and even difficult conversations about what it takes to be a great leader and part of a great team. I'm excited to be here, and I'm honored that you've chosen to join me. This first episode is going to be a little different than those that follow, but there's a good reason for that. In future episodes, I'll usually have a guest or two, and I've got some really incredible guests lined up. These are some people who you're really going to want to meet, from people who have worked in the White House, to people who have spent time in prison, to master certified coaches, to marriage experts, to professors and academics and thought leaders. Each has a story to tell and a point of view you'll want to hear. They all have unique insight or wisdom to share, and I'm so grateful that they're willing to share it with us. I think you'll find them to be delightfully interesting, and more about them later. But before asking you to invest your time in my conversations with others, I want to introduce myself and let you know why I'm so committed to this effort. I'm calling this very first episode In the Beginning. Have you heard that before? Because I want to share a bit of who I am before we get started, before we get too far down the line in these episodes. I want you to know who I am, what I believe in, and why I started this podcast. And most importantly, why you'll want to join us for each and every episode, because I think you're a learner like I am. In short, this episode is going to have a big dose of start with why, but that's almost always a good place to start. Let me begin by explaining why I'm so passionate about creating great leaders, great teams, and helping people accomplish more together. It's because I've been on some really great teams and served with some incredibly talented people in my time. I've worked with leaders who somehow knew how to engage and inspire people to go all in for a common cause. And they always stood up for what was right. And as a result, we accomplished some pretty amazing things. And it was exciting. It was energizing. And every day was fun. Every day had an opportunity in it to do something pretty special, pretty great with some incredible people. And I grew to admire and enjoy and consider these folks my friends. On the other hand, I've also been associated with leaders and part of teams where it felt as though the life was being sucked out of me on a daily basis. Instead of reaching for the stars, it was duck and cover every day. And I found myself just trying to survive and preserve what little bit of dignity remained on a daily basis. It was hard. I didn't like it. And looking back, during those hard times, my colleagues and I often spent way too much time and energy trying to figure out how to escape the miserable situation we were in. We engaged in crazy gossip and conspiracy theories, and we spent wasted a lot of time, quite honestly, commiserating with each other. And we seemed to all be really unhappy. It was all an enormous waste of time looking back, and life is just really too short to waste. So I don't want to do that again. I never want to do that again. And on the performance side of the ledger, nothing spectacular was accomplished on those mediocre teams. And what we did get done was dragged across the finish line with micromanagement and hypercriticism. There were no big breakthroughs, no home runs, and nothing notable to report. And again, as a team, many of us were kind of miserable. But now contrasting that to those special teams I had the privilege to be part of, we accomplished some pretty amazing things. The kind of stuff that changes lives. And it was fun. I think I said that earlier, but that's such a big part of being on a great team. You're able to have fun together. You enjoy one another. There's lots of laughs. Time flies by. You're in a flow with people you care about. Doesn't get much better than that. Needless to say, there was and is a huge difference in those two types of environments. Usually, those differences are directly influenced by the leaders involved and how the people involved, the members of the team, related to each other. But it became a lifelong pursuit for me to figure out exactly what it was that made some leaders and teams so good and others so lousy. I approached this topic with ferocious curiosity. Why one leader and one team was exceptionally good and why the bad teams and bad leaders were so bad. I thought if I could identify the factors that affect these very different outcomes, I would make it my mission to share what I've learned with others. And that's what I've been doing essentially for the past several years, 20 years. And if I really think about it, most of my adult life, I've been trying to share and help leaders and teams get better. This podcast is about sharing those lessons, insights, and practical ideas with as many people as possible for the purpose of making life better for them, those people involved, and helping them achieve more, to get more done. In fact, I want to help people achieve extraordinary results. In short, for me, it always comes down to the ability to balance people and their needs and those relationships with that need to perform, to get things done. And I try to do that in ways that maximize the potential of each individual and every situation. In this podcast, I want to share with people what it takes to move from that lousy leader column to the great leader column. And if you're already in the great leader side of the ledger, then I want to help you get better. If you're stuck on a not so great team, I want to give you some insight on what you can do to move the needle and make a difference no matter where you are on the org chart. To do this, everyone has to embrace their responsibility to bring out the best in the people around them. And we do this through the way we communicate, collaborate, navigate conflict, and build relationships. This is what sets the best apart from the rest. And there's just no getting around it. That's what this podcast is about. How to bring out the best in people and build bridges where we're divided. It's about getting stuff done with, through, and for people. It's about sharing proven approaches, insight gained from mistakes and hard knocks, and then making those relevant to your real world situations now by providing ways to practically apply these lessons. It's about making relationships work. And make no mistake, these are lessons for everyone. Whether you're a young person in your first job or you're a senior leader thinking about your legacy, there's going to be something for everyone. In case you're wondering who this guy is, who's the guy with the microphone who's making these big promises? Maybe you're wondering, does he have the credentials to pull it off? Let me give you an executive summary of my life story. I started my professional career as a U.S. Army officer at the ripe old age of 22, and I was immediately given the responsibility of leading about 30 people, and we were serving overseas in the height of the Cold War. And then over this next 6 years or so on which I was on active duty, I had the opportunity to serve in a number of jobs. But the most impactful job on me, the one that demanded the most from me, was when I was given the opportunity to command a company with about 150 soldiers when I was in my mid-20s. I was a young captain, and I was surrounded by people who helped me do that job. I think I did it pretty well, but I know I wouldn't have done it well if I didn't have a great battalion commander, staff officer colleagues who were there to support me, an outstanding grizzled old first sergeant, and several senior non-commissioned officers who I had the good sense to listen to and learn from. And then after I left active duty, I spent a few years with the California Army National Guard, where I was activated for the Los Angeles riots in 1992. And I saw some pretty crazy things right here on the streets of Los Angeles, things that I never thought, and I hope I never see again on the streets of a major city in the United States. By that time, my civilian career was starting to take off. I had joined a pharmaceutical company, and I was on the commercial side of the business doing sales and marketing and a variety of jobs, climbing that corporate ladder. And about 15 years into my career with the pharmaceutical company, I landed a job that I just considered to be my sweet spot. It was really transformative for me because I stumbled into the position of director of leadership development, and I was on a team of people who did leadership and employee development for this growing organization. We were building curriculum, designing curriculum, delivering it, evaluating it. I had the chance to really roll up my sleeves and get involved in every aspect of corporate learning for the most part. And it was a dream job because I learned so much. It was also about the time that I went back to graduate school and earned my doctorate in education at Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education and Psychology. My company was generous enough to support that effort, and I was able to ground myself in the scholarship and theory of leadership and development that really shaped my career from that point on, opened doors of opportunity that allowed me to teach at several universities. I still teach at Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education and Psychology, working with doctoral students there. I also have the opportunity to teach now at California Baptist University, where I work with doctoral students and master's level students. And none of that would have been possible unless I had that deep immersion in the scholarship of leadership, education, management, all those things that have shaped me, I'm able to share. I also had the opportunity to spend about 10 years of my life developing training and using a tool called the SDI 2.0 that helps people increase their relationship intelligence. And I did this with a company called Core Strengths. And before Core Strengths, they were called Personal Strengths Publishing. They're Carlsbad based here in California. And it was a wonderful ride for several years. Together with my friends Tim Scudder and Kent Micheal, we wrote a book called Have a Nice Conflict: How to Find Success and Satisfaction in the Most Unlikely Places. And that book enjoyed a good deal of success and received some pretty spectacular views. Now I'm on my own. I'm building my own. I'm writing my own books. I'm writing my own courses, working with colleagues, teaching, working with clients in an organization that I've named Ambassador Associates. More recently, I wrote a book called Mission First, People Always: The Definitive Guide to Balancing People and Performance. It's a practical guide for building dynamic and respectful workplace relationships while also achieving the loftiest of organizational goals. It's about creating a culture where collaboration thrives, communication flows freely, and conflict is rare and brief. I tried to fill each chapter with tips that are supported by inspirational stories, personal anecdotes, and scholarly research, along with opportunities for reflection and developmental activities. And that's really the basis for this podcast. This podcast is a continuation of what I wrote in the book, but it's a series of conversations with wise and successful and committed people that I want to bring to your attention, that I want to share with you. That's the big idea behind the Mission First, People Always podcast. Here's my promise to you. I pledge to educate, try to entertain, and add value in each episode of the Mission First, People Always podcast. I'm going to do that through uplifting conversations with some really sharp people that will make you think, provide you with new ideas and perspectives, challenge your old assumptions and mental models. And I hope, and I really mean this, I hope it will make you a better leader and position you to bring out the best in those around you. So please take this journey with me. Join me for the next episode where I'll talk with a Hall of Famer. Not a baseball Hall of Famer, not a football Hall of Famer, not a hockey Hall of Famer. I'm talking to a Hall of Famer from the White House Communications Agency. His name is Darrell Williams. Darrell worked in the White House under 3 different administrations. He's traveled with presidents and vice presidents, and he had a front row seat to history. He was in the White House during 9/11, and then he served closely with the vice president of the United States for several months post 9/11 as the global war on terror was kicking off. Now, I want you to know from Darrell directly, hear from him what he saw, what he did, and what he learned about leadership and building great teams while he worked in the White House. You'll definitely want to hear what he has to say. So let's talk again soon on the Mission First, People Always podcast about what it takes to be a great leader and build a great team.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.